Enough electoral votes, more than 270, more than enough to become the 44th president of the United States. He will be the first African-American president of the United States.
I've been broke all my life, but I kept hope all them nights. You see business in my city? Yeah, they closed all them twice. I was just riding down Salem, all them damn potholes, I can't drive. I know y'all can fix it faster, but I know y'all won't try. Don't nobody care about us, and that's why I don't vote. Voted for Obama back in 2012, I remember that's when I had hope. He was saying, yes, we can, and everybody got less food stamps. And when I turned 21, I was still broke, I'd never vote again. I don't think I ever had a president make my life better. Did it all on my own, ain't no politician ever do a nice gesture. I don't even know the man's name, I ain't never seen her one time ever. Tell me how she gonna help the city. What I'm supposed to do, write letters? What I'm supposed to do, blame Trump? He ain't never really gave a ain't nobody raised minimum wage. None of these jobs pay enough. I think they just wanna keep us broke, cause they ain't putting none in place for us. This how all my people feel, but we gotta learn. We complained enough, let me change it up. Everything I just said, everybody I know think the same way. See, they don't wanna see us vote, and we never do, so we see the same thing. But all our votes really do count, and they'll never really let it show. So now I'm finna break it down, cause if I don't, you would probably never know. First thing first, you know back in middle school when they taught us, it was 3 branches of the government. We forgot it when we got older. It's the judicial, the legislative, and executive. But all we know is the executive. That's the mayor, or the governor, and the president. Now none of them 3 people make no laws, they just be checking them. The laws come to their desk and all they do is say no or yes to it. So when the news station tried to tell us that Barack Obama couldn't put us on, we was all salty at Obama when it was the Congress members all along. We gotta focus on the legislative branch, yeah, they the ones that make the laws. Yeah, they the ones write how much food stamp money you get on the card. But when people that wanted to help us wanted the job, I know they probably lost. Cause we ain't even know their name, we ain't know their face, we ain't know it all. So the Congress or the State House, that's legislative, they make laws. So what we want from the president is what they do, okay y'all? See, they election every 2 years, but we don't ever even go to those. The Congress, they can raise minimum wage, but we ain't even really know it though. So you know how back in '08, when we all voted for Obama, we was all supposed to go back in 2010 and vote for the Congress. Cause they the ones make child support laws, they the ones choose if your kids at school get to eat steak or corn dogs. The State House make the court costs. So if the country failed, then you can't say it's them, it's your fault. Cause y'all ain't know to vote for Congress members that was for y'all. And they don't gotta leave after 4 years, and we just let them sit. See, they don't wanna tell you this, they want you to focus on the president. Now the third branch is the judicial, that's judges. They the reason why John Crawford and Trayvon ain't had justice. So when Meek Mill got locked up just for popping willies, we blame the judge and not the city when they let her get voted in, cause they ain't know who to vote against. Imagine life on the other side. Roads better, schools better, everybody get their license back, grocery store food better, custody of your kids back, homeless people get new shelters. If we gon' fix the U.S., we gotta start with them 2 letters, me and you. Somebody told us that the government wanna keep us broke, but the only reason why those people in the government is cause we ain't vote. And I ain't talking about the president, I'm talking about the ones we ain't know. See, they was gonna try to keep it low, but it's gonna hurt them when they see the pros.
Every time you stay home, someone is making a decision about you, making decisions about the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food your kids eat, and how much money you bring home every 2 weeks. So every time you sit out an election, every time you don't show up because you think it doesn't matter, someone else is happy that you didn't show up, so they can make that decision for you. Vote.
The most fundamental of all civil rights is the right to vote. Governor Beshear in December, by executive order, restored the voting rights to 152,000 Kentuckians. And of that 152,000, 22,000 are in Louisville and Jefferson County. To determine if your voting rights have been restored, you can go online to the website civilrightsrestoration.ky.gov and enter the necessary information, and it will tell you whether your rights have been restored. And if they have, you can register while online. If you incur any difficulties with that site and your name does not appear or you want additional information, if you will call the number 502-782-9731, and at that number, they will be able to assist you in regards to that. We have the opportunity to impact election and the voter rolls in this state. With this 152,000 registered and the 22,000 registered in Jefferson County, we can have real impact on our election. So I ask that you encourage your relatives, if they're ex-offenders, to go to this site. If they're friends that you know, encourage to go to them site. We need to get the word out to as many individuals as we can, because in the end, elections have consequences and we can impact those consequences.
In America, we all count, no matter where we call home, how we worship, or who we love. And the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Because this is the count that informs where hundreds of billions in funding will go each year for things like education, healthcare, and programs that touch us all. Complete the census online, by phone, or by mail. Shape your future. Start here at 2020census.gov.
Talk about doing some good in our hood. Earlier this week, Metro Louisville's Office of Resilience and Community Service hosted the Metro March for Meals for Our City Seniors. The office has set up different pickup locations across the city, and St. Stephen is proud to be on that list. Seniors 60 years and older were provided with a frozen meal, a welcomed blessing during this uncertain time. Meals may be picked up between 10 and 12 at one of the 6 rolling locations across the city. St. Stephen will continue to participate in this initiative every Monday between 10 and 12.
Hey, COVID-19 is a real issue, but we are serious about our fight against the virus here at St. Stephen Church. So listen as some of our staff members give you healthy tips to keep you safe during this time.
stay healthy at home. Only leave home for essentials, such as groceries, once a week.
Please avoid crowds and gatherings. Avoid crowds of any size. This includes family visits, recreational areas, and crowded shopping.
Practice social distancing. Maintain 6 feet between you and others at all times.
Know when to seek care. Follow the Know When to Seek Care guidelines at kycovid19.ky.gov.
Stay up to date through reliable sources such as kycovid19.ky.gov.
Wash your hands with warm soap and water for at least 20 seconds. And disinfect all surfaces.
Apply for benefits. Kentucky has expanded unemployment benefits. So if you have not already done so, please go to kcc.ky.gov.
You have to do your part. You have to read. You got to pray. You have to prioritize your mental health. There's a link at the bottom of the screen. Check it out. Virtual mental health exercises, whatever you have to do to stay calm in this pandemic of COVID-19.
Do not travel. The safest place for you and others is at home. Do not travel by plane or by car.
Report non-compliance. If you see individuals or businesses not complying with COVID-19 guidelines, report to the KY Safer hotline at 1-833-KY-SAFER.
Hello, everyone. This is Ken Jobst, and this is our Generations Bible Study for the week. And today is April 8th already. And I just want to welcome you and thank you for staying inside so we can come together and have this Bible study. You know, we're taking a look at the Old Testament book of 2 Kings, and we've made it all the way up to 2 Kings chapter 11. And we're going to be taking a look at a remarkable character in the Old Testament, one that we don't hear about very much, but she was the only queen in Judah. And we're going to see how she came about to be the queen. And let me tell you, it's quite a story. But before we begin, I just want to say a particular shout out to everybody who's a part of the Wednesday noon Bible study, the Generations Bible study. Want to thank particularly Deborah Gordon for helping to get the word out. And thank you, everybody who is letting somebody else know that they can come and have a time of fellowship and a time of Bible study here in the middle of the week, in the middle of the day, in the middle of the Word. And so let's get right to it. If you may have your Bible, you can just turn in your Bible to 2 Kings chapter 11, or if you have your message notes are available as well. So we encourage you to refer to them, take a look at them. But from 2 Kings chapter 11, verse 1, here's how it begins. When Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she proceeded to destroy the whole royal family. Now, to put this in just a little context, we look over our shoulder back at chapter 10 in 2 Kings. And what happened in chapter 10 was that Jehu killed not only the king of the northern kingdom of Israel, but he also killed the king of the southern kingdom, and Ahaziah. Remember that Ahaziah's family was passing through, and they discovered that he had been killed. Word got back to Ahaziah's mother, whose name is Athaliah. Now, this is a chapter largely about Athaliah. She's on the, in the story of the Bible for just this one chapter, pretty much. But wow, Athaliah. If you take a look at your message notes, we need to study Athaliah just a little bit. I think Athaliah has some lessons for us. If you can't learn about good things from people's example. Sometimes you learn about bad things or evil things from someone's example. So Athaliah gives us, some things to avoid. But filling in these first blanks in your message notes, Athaliah was three things at once. Athaliah, first of all, was a king's daughter. She was the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel from the northern kingdom. So she was a king's daughter. She grew up in the palace. She had an understanding of how power worked. She saw, everything that you would see in a palace. So she's a king's daughter. She became a king's wife, right? She was a king's wife, and she was also a king's mother. She was mother of Ahaziah. Now, you'll realize Ahaziah is a king of Judah, and Ahab was king in the northern country of Israel. So we saw over the last couple of chapters, it used to be that at the beginning of the divided kingdom, Israel was into idolatry. They set up the golden calves at Dan and Beersheba, at Bethel and Dan. They set up golden calves, and they worshiped that way, so they would be distinctive from Judah. So they wouldn't have to go to Jerusalem to worship because of the political impact of that. If people started going to Jerusalem to worship, they might say, well, why shouldn't we have Jerusalem as our political home as well? So Israel was apostate. That is, the northern tribes were apostate from the beginning. They had turned their back on the way to worship the one true living God in the way the one true living God wanted to be worshiped. So as time goes by, though, we see that Judah starts acting more and more and more like Israel. That is, they have slid away from true worship. The leadership has gone away from the way things should have been. So by the time we get to chapters 10 and 11 in 2 Kings, what we find is that there's very, very little distinction theologically. There's little distinction in terms of ethics or morality between the two kingdoms. And indeed, they're practically interchangeable at this point. That this is the reign of Athaliah is probably the lowest point in the history of Judah. So Athaliah was a king's daughter, she was a king's wife, and she was a king's mother. And, you could describe Athaliah as Judah's Jezebel, right? What Athaliah's mother was to the northern kingdom, Athaliah is to Judah. So, let me tell you, she's pretty rough. Let's look at this first verse again, because wow, she's a tough one right here. When Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead. Now, what would you do if you saw that your son was dead? Wouldn't you mourn? Wouldn't you, weep and have anguish and everything? Wouldn't you set aside a time for grieving? No. When she saw that her son was dead, she proceeded to destroy the whole royal family. She killed off everybody who was in the line of succession to be the next king, conveniently putting herself in the position then of being the regent, the leader. There's a word, regicide. It means to kill a king, and we see regicide a lot in the Bible, the killing of a king. Verse 2, but Jehosheba, the daughter of King Jehoram and sister of Ahaziah, took Joash, son of Ahaziah, and stole him away from among the royal princes who were about to be murdered. She put him and his nurse in a bedroom to hide him from Athaliah, so that he would not be killed. He remained hidden with his nurse at the temple of the Lord for 6 years while Athaliah ruled the land. So now, Okay, good. You're with me. You're with me on this. Why would you hide him in the temple of the Lord? You hide him in the temple of the Lord because Athaliah is never going to look there. Athaliah is never at the temple of the Lord. So it was, I don't want to say it was easy to hide him, but it was logical to hide Joash in the temple of the Lord because Athaliah never would have, Athaliah is not going to come there Sunday morning. Athaliah is not going to be there for the midweek service. You could hide him anywhere. You could set him out, just in the middle of the temple and be perfectly fine. But hid him there for 6 years. 6 years. What does that tell you about Athaliah's worship attendance? Athaliah would have been able, you would think, to be at the temple. Now, here's an interesting thing. Now, here's another little wrinkle. As a woman, she would not have been allowed to approach the temple. So there's that as well. But I mean, just the temple grounds and anywhere, just talking, you would have stumbled upon his presence somewhere. But no, she's not anywhere to be found around the temple. You miss a lot when you miss church. You're going to miss a lot of stuff that's going on. Now, verse 4, in the 7th year, this is 7 years, little Joash has been hidden away. In the 7th year, Jehoiada sent for now Jehoiada is a priest. Jehoiada is the high priest, so in charge of the temple. Jehoiada sent for the commanders of units of 100, the Carites, and the guards, and had them brought to him at the temple of the Lord. So he gets the security team, right? He made a covenant with them and put them under oath at the temple of the Lord. He made a covenant. That is, he made an agreement with them, and he put them under oath. This is kind of like a belt and suspenders approach to doing business here. Then he showed them the king's son. So these are the guys who guard the temple. Even they hadn't seen the king's son in the temple. Or if they did, he was disguised or something. Then they showed him the king's son. He commanded them, saying, "This is what you are to do. You who are in the 3 companies that are going on guard duty on the Sabbath, 1/3 of you guarding the royal palace, 1/3 at the Sur gate, and 1/3 at the gate behind the guard, who take turns guarding the temple. And you who are in the other 2 companies that normally go off Sabbath duty are all to guard the temple for the king." Right? So verse 8, "Station yourselves around the king, each of you with a weapon in hand. Anyone who approaches your ranks is to be put to death. Stay close to the king wherever he goes." The commanders of the units of 100 did just as Jehoiada the priest had ordered. Each one took his men, those who were going on duty on the Sabbath and those who were going off duty, and came to Jehoiada the priest. Then he gave the commanders, I love this. Then he gave the commanders the spears and shields that had belonged to King David and that were in the temple of the Lord. Okay, you got to picture this. There's the weapons that King David put in the temple. Now, how long ago has it been that King David did this? This is like a couple hundred years ago. This is a long time ago. David put these weapons in the temple of the Lord. They were like, I don't know, maybe people thought they were just decorative ornaments, right? But they were put there as memorials. They were put there as memorials to David's victories. You know what? Whenever you have a spiritual victory, it's a good thing to remember it. Don't forget what God has done for you. So we all need to have some sort of a spiritual memory, a spiritual souvenir of how God got us through. Because then when the next challenge comes along, hello, COVID-19, right? Then you've got a track record with God. God has been with us every step of the way. And dating all the way back here in 2 Kings 11, dating all the way back to David, to King David. So they took these memorial spears and shields and armed themselves with them. They armed themselves with the positive history that God has shown them all along, every step of the way. That's important for us too. Don't forget what God has done for you. Don't forget in the dark what God shows you in the light, right? Okay, continuing then. The guards, each with weapon in hand, stationed themselves around the king near the altar of the temple, near the altar and the temple, from the south side to the north side of the temple. So these men are armed and they are taking care of the young king, who's like 7 years old at this point. Jehoiada brought out the king's son, and watch this. Now Jehoiada is doing it. Jehoiada is the high priest, and that's the important thing. Jehoiada is the priest, and so it's the priest who anoints the king. And even in England today, when when a king or queen is crowned, it doesn't take place in a government building. It doesn't take place in the palace or an office somewhere. It takes place in the church. So it's a recognition that there is a higher authority. Here, Jehoiada is the high priest, and Jehoiada is going to be the one who anoints the new king. So Jehoiada brought out the king's son and put the crown on him. He presented him with a copy of the covenant and proclaimed him king. Now I love this. This is so rich. It's the priest that does this because the priest is acting on behalf of this higher authority. The priest is acting on behalf of God. He puts the crown on his head. So he crowns him. Remember, the crown is an emblem, not simply of rule, but the crown is situated on your forehead. So your thoughts should be thoughts of leadership. What kind of thinking should I be doing to lead this people? What are the pure thoughts, the insightful thoughts, the transformational thoughts? How am I going to think through these issues and these problems that are brought to me? So Jehoiada brings out the king's son, puts the crown on him, and presents him with a copy of the covenant. Presents him, as it were, with a copy of the Bible. And now that's very significant because right there you've got the law. And even then, the king was subject to the law. The king just couldn't go run off and do whatever he wanted to. The king could not make it up as he went along. The king, even a 7-year-old king, needed to be able to refer to the scripture, needed to be able to be conversant with the covenant. And so, at this time, we're looking that the covenant may well have been simply those first 5 books of Moses, the Pentateuch. Some people say that it was just simply Deuteronomy. Whatever the case, the king is impressed that the king does not have carte blanche to do whatever the king decides to do with the people, because the king is there in a fiduciary responsibility relationship, that the king is there on behalf of God to rule the people. The people are God's people, not the king's people. So he's got the crown on his head. He's presented with a copy of the covenant and proclaimed him king. That is, the priest proclaims the new king. They anointed him, which means the oil is poured over his head. They anointed him, and the people clapped their hands and shouted, "Long live the king." When Athaliah heard the noise made by the guards and the people, she went to the people at the temple of the Lord. Wow. She went to the people. When she heard the noise, she went to the people who were at the temple. She didn't go to the temple to meet God. She went to see the people. Oh, wow. How many people just go to church to see the other people? Right? That's what Athaliah is doing. And Athaliah went when she heard noise, not when she heard a word from the Lord. When she heard the noise, she went. When she heard the noise made by the guards and the people, she went to the people at the temple of the Lord. You know what? It would have been good for her to go to the temple of the Lord and pray. It would have been good for her to go to the temple of the Lord and worship and praise. But she just went because she heard noise there. And upon hearing the noise, she goes to see what the people are doing. Wow. Verse 14. She looked, and there was the king, standing by the pillar as the custom was. The officers and the trumpeters were beside the king, and all the people of the land were rejoicing and blowing trumpets. Then Athaliah tore her robes and called out, "Treason! Treason!" You know, I just love that for some reason. That's the depth of irony. That here you've got somebody who killed their way into the throne, right? She wiped out all these other people, murdered them so she could be placed in the position of authority as queen regent. And now she's the one, she had usurped the authority, and now she's the one crying foul. She's the one crying treason, treason, when actually things are just now being set straight. Verse 15, Jehoiada, the priest, ordered the commanders of the units of 100 who were in charge of the troops, bring her out between the ranks and put to the sword anyone who follows her. For the priest had said she must not be put to death in the temple of the Lord. So they seized her as she reached the place where the horses enter the palace grounds, and she was put to death. Verse 17. I might add just right here that Athaliah meets a very similar, destiny as her mother Jezebel. That they're both murdered, and yep, they meet a sad end. Verse 17. Jehoiada, once again, remember Jehoiada is the high priest. Jehoiada then made a covenant between the Lord and the king and the people, that they would be the Lord's people. Now, I think that's very important. In Ecclesiastes, it says a threefold cord is not quickly broken. So Jehoiada has done a tremendous work here in bringing these three together: the Lord, the king, and the people. They would be the Lord's people, and also made a covenant between the king and the people. All the people of the land went to the temple of Baal and tore it down. They smashed the altars and idols to pieces and killed Mattan, the priest of Baal, in front of the altars. So here in the southern kingdom, Baal worship is being done away with. So we're having a cleansing. We're having like a renewal among the leadership in Judah. Then Jehoiada the priest posted guards at the temple of the Lord. He took with him the commanders of hundreds, the Kerites, the guards of all the people of the land, and together they brought the king down from the temple of the Lord and went into the palace, entering by way of the gate of the guards. Let me do that one more time, because this I love this too. They brought the king down from the temple. Where's the king? The king is anointed in the temple. So the king is at the place of worship. They bring him, having been anointed and crowned, they bring him from the place of worship to the palace, right? So from church, they bring him to the palace, entering by way of the gate of the guards. You know what? I love this. Going from the church to the home, right? Going from the temple to the residence, but then entering in through the gate of the guards. I like to see that as the guardian angels who understand when you're going out and you're coming in, you are surrounded with the guardian angels of God who are looking out for you. And mercy, that's such a powerful, powerful image. The king then took his place on the royal throne. And what do you do on the royal throne? You reign. You make the decisions. You do the things that need to be done for God's glory and for our good. All the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was calm. Look at that. All the people rejoiced. So there's joy, and the city was calm. There's joy and there's calm. There's not anxiety. There's not craziness. There's not unpredictability. There's joy. The land should be joyful. Life should be joyful and peaceable. Shalom. It should be calm. All the people of the land, this is verse 20, rejoiced, and the city was calm because Athaliah had been slain with the sword at the palace. Joash was 7 years old when he began to reign. So that concludes the chapter. Now, filling in these message notes, just so we've got the message notes complete. Once again, Athaliah in this chapter could be described as Judah's Jezebel. She's the one who manipulated things. She's a murderess, and she clawed her way to the top and to the throne. Remember, she's the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel from the northern kingdom of Israel. And she is the mother of King Ahaziah, who was killed by Jehu in chapter 10. Now, we see Athaliah's strategy, and Athaliah's strategy is the epitome of looking out for number one. She killed all of those who were in succession, in the line of succession to be the king of Judah, in order to take over the power. And she had that power for 7 years. But strangely, this was an in the family coup d'etat. She killed her own flesh and blood to be able to do what she needed to do for power. This is an astonishingly craven type action that Athaliah did. And then perhaps the takeaway, as evil as Athaliah is not the takeaway from this chapter. She's not the takeaway. Joash is the takeaway. Joash is, watch this, he's the hidden heir of the promise of God. God promised that there would always be a descendant of David upon the throne. Now, okay, there's this 7-year time span here where the heir is hidden. That is, the one who is going to come into the promise doesn't look like a king. He's hidden away. He doesn't have all the accoutrement of power and influence. No, he's in a hidden time. But that's okay, because God's promise still stands. He is a hidden heir. And I think you look around, you may see some hidden heirs, some people that God still has a promise for, even if that promise has not come to full fruition just yet. Understand that with faith and by faith, that promise that God has made to each and every one of us is one day closer to its fruition. Even in the midst of COVID-19, even in the midst of sheltering in place and all the quarantine and all that kind of business, there's some hidden heirs of the promise of God within the sound of my voice. And you know who you are. You're one of them right there. Hidden heirs. Because God is working this thing out. And even though if God doesn't always meet our timetable, God's divine timetable is the one that we need to abide by. So this tremendously sorrowful, horrific backdrop of the reign of Athaliah for the 7-year period of time. That backdrop is the backdrop in which we find little Joash being preserved, being hidden, and then being recognized, being anointed king over Israel, even at this young and tender age. And here's another thing. We're talking about a 7-year-old kid here. 7-year-old Joash. But you know what? Jehoiada still brings the Bible. Jehoiada still brings the covenant to Joash and says, look, this is an important thing. You need to be familiar with it. Bring your children, bring your grandchildren, bring them to Sunday school, bring them to church. Talk about what the sermon is. Talk about what the Bible study is. Get them to be comfortable and conversant with the Word of God and understand it as such. And then we'll see that there's so many more blessings that go along with that. Well, that's our lesson for this week. God bless you. I just appreciate the opportunity for us to meet, even if it's through streaming like this. It's still a blessing that God has provided in such a time as this for us. I really pray that you're staying healthy and staying well. You, every one of you, you're in my prayers. And I'd like to encourage you once again to tune in to the worship service on Sunday at 9:30 and 11:30, and the midweek service also Sunday evening at 7. Also, we are, Easter Sunday's right around the corner, and we want to encourage you to be an Andrew. Invite somebody to, send them a little text, send them a little email, let them know that even though they are socially isolated right now, that they can still be in a good, warm fellowship here at St. Stephen Church. Well, once again, hope to see you on next Wednesday. We will continue in our study of 2 Kings. The title of our study is the having faith and power, or the power of faith. So we're going to demonstrate the power of faith for each and every one of us. God bless you. Take care, and I hope to see you very soon. Bye-bye.